Why do people buy insurance? We're told over and over again it's peace of mind and protection against calamities, security, responsibility, take care of your family, be a family, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And we hear it all the time. It's part of our financial planning. And really, we buy insurance because we know that bad things happen to good people, and we want to make sure that we're protected if those bad things happen to us. If your client is a victim of a fire, what should they do? Here we're talking about, I mean, we talk about insurance claims overall and how to handle claims, and if you're an attorney or you're somebody who suffered a loss. And you're, in this instance right now, we're talking about fire because of the Camp Fire and the North Bay fires, and everyone's dealing with their insurance companies. And when a loss happens, what happens and what you should do is contact the agent or the broker who sold the policy. You contact your insurance company directly. It's very important that you read the policy. And this is the beginning point. Once you contact the agent, the broker, the insurance company, reading the policy. Insurance claims are all about the policy. You have to know what it says. You have to understand it. Now, almost none of us who buy insurance read our policies right out of the box, and almost none of us understand them and when we first purchase them. So what we do is when there's a loss that occurs, you get the policy, and there are going to be parts of that policy that really apply to your specific loss that you want to make sure that you understand. Now, the overriding emotions when a loss occurs are fear and confusion. And the question that goes through people's heads is, I have this policy and I don't understand it. What am I really supposed to do? And so that's what we're going to try to answer a little bit of today. Everyone that you talk to, whether it's the company, your agent, your friends, your family, everyone says file a claim. What does that mean and how do you do it? Well, the agent or your broker may contact the insurance company and get the ball rolling for you. The company very often will provide some form of a claim form. And very often there'll be no specific claim form. What it'll be is an email, a phone call, and the claim gets underway. In your insurance policy, there are time periods that matter. And they matter because they say you have to make your claim within a certain amount of time. You have to provide them notice within a certain amount of time. And those time periods are generally relatively short. Now, if you miss that, oftentimes there are ways for us to work around that. It's not it's not necessarily catastrophic, but what you need to do is look at the policy in terms of, and oftentimes there will be a provision in the policy, how to make a claim. And how do you successfully make the claim once a claim has been filed? So the way you file a claim, contact the insurance company, follow whatever procedure it is that's set forth in the policy or in the claim form that they send you, submit it, get that done. Now, what you need to do very, very quickly is, and as thoroughly as you can, gather together all your important insurance documents. The insurance policy, request a certified copy in writing. Do this in writing. Get that going. And quite frankly, a lot of the communication you want to do when dealing with an insurance company, you want to do it in writing. And there are going to be a lot of conversations that occur with adjusters. You're going to want to confirm those communications in writing. So if the adjuster says that he or she is going to do something for you, the insurance company is going to do something, get it in writing. If they say, you know, we'll get back to you, I'll get you an answer in a week or 10 days, just send a follow-up email. Thank you so much for the conversation today. I appreciate it. I just want to confirm you said you're going to do whatever it was in the next 7 to 10 days. You want your declarations pages. Now, what are these? It's usually a page or two, unless it's a larger commercial policy. It's usually a page or two that says, look, these are your coverages. This is your dwelling. This is your personal property. These are your auto limits, whatever it is. And there are going to be specific limits that are set out there that are going to say what the amount of coverages you have for a particular type of loss. It's very important information. You need to know that. One of the things that in a lot of claims that may be an issue that you may want your insurance application. What did the agent fill out when you applied for insurance? What did you fill out when you applied for insurance? What was the information that went to the insurance company? You know, the insurance company has, we all know they have the sales side. You know, we see the commercials on TV, the agents are knocking on our door and calling us, and they all want to sell us the policy. That's the sales side. And then there's the underwriting side. So once you decide, hey, I'm going to go with that insurance company and that's where I want to be, and then the underwriting says, goes through the process of determining, are you going to be insured with that company and how much is it going to cost, and what are the limits, and what are the amounts, and those kinds of things. And then there's claims. So when a claim occurs, when there's a loss that occurs, like your house fire, a fire burns down your house, the claims people then jump in. So you have sales, you have underwriting, you have claims. You want to get that application so you can know what was the information they had, what were they dealing with when they made a determination, what kind of policy was going to be issued to you and for how much. The riders, the endorsements, the amendments, these are the things that are kind of add-ons to your insurance policies. They're things that make your policy have either greater coverage or they restrict coverage. They provide greater limits or restriction on limits for various things. So the riders, the endorsements, the amendments are all part of your complete insurance policy. You want to gather together the information on your premium payments, your cancel checks, your bank statements, your premium lapse notices, if you had any. You want to be able, especially in a situation where there's an insurance company who may be asserting that you failed to pay your premium and you say, no, I did pay it. If there's any issue at all about whether or not the insurance policy was in force on the date of the loss, you need to have that information that helps prove that. Any claim notices, any proof of loss, the information that you've provided them, that they provide you relating to all those things. You want to be able to gather that stuff together, keep it together. Any of the correspondence, the written correspondence, whether emails, letters, back and forth in the sales process, you want to have all of that. It may become important later in your claim with the insurance company. And then the other thing is the insurance company flyers and advertising that you received. Now, some people keep this stuff, but a lot of people receive this stuff, and there are a lot of big promises made and a lot of things that are said by an insurance company that get you to want to do business with them. You want to gather that stuff together if possible. So what are an insurance company's duties? Well, and a lot of people don't realize this, but and there are a lot of duties that they have that we're not going to have time to go into today. But an insurance company has to thoroughly investigate the claim. The insurance company has to promptly investigate the claim. What does that mean? They don't get to just sit back on their heels and have you provide all the information to prove up your loss. They have an affirmative obligation to do the work to determine what is the claim and how much is it worth. Now, you as the person who bought the insurance, you have the obligation to participate in that. You have a duty to provide relevant information so that the insurance company can do its job. But the insurance company doesn't just get to sit back and wait for you to provide the information and then have them nitpick it. And oftentimes that's what they do. But when they do that, they're acting in what's called bad faith. They have to promptly investigate. So they don't get to drag their heels. They have to, the idea of insurance, when if you go think about that earlier slide, all the promises of peace of mind, you know, we hear about like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and you're in good hands with Allstate, and all the other great promos that they have for selling policies. Well, when it comes time to actually pursue a claim, the insurance company has to do it quickly. They have to be reasonable. They have to be diligent. They have to be also objective. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand. When an insurance company is evaluating your claim, they have to affirmatively look for evidence in support of your claim and in support of the full value of your claim. And they have to give the insureds, meaning the person who owns the insurance policy, that person's interest as much consideration as it does its own interest. And that's really powerful, because an insurance company doesn't get to just sit back and be arbiter of a claim and say, well, you know, we don't really think you've proved it up enough. That's not the way insurance works. They have to go out and they have to find the evidence as well, and they have to interpret the evidence and consider evidence that supports your claim and supports the full value of your claim. The other thing they have to do is they have to be timely in their response to you. They don't get to say they'll contact you in a week and then wait a month. They don't get to just wait a month. They have to move quickly. And again, this goes back to this idea of, if we just sort of have peace of mind as a shortcut for that earlier slide. Peace of mind is what it's all about. Peace of mind and making sure that claims are paid timely, in as quick a manner as reasonable. Because that's why people buy insurance. If your house burns down, you don't have the luxury of being able to wait for 2 years to find out what the claim is going to be and how much is going to be paid. We all start working right away to rebuild and to rebuild lives and to try to get traction under our feet so we can move forward. And we see that over and over again. The other thing that goes right into that in terms of the timely responses, they have to timely pay. They can't drag their heels. They can't, they're not allowed to just move slowly in the hope that because somebody is desperate, their house is burned down, maybe they'll accept a little bit less money or a lot less money on their claim if we just wait it out. The insurance company is absolutely not allowed to do that. Again, if you focus on this slide, their failure to do what's set out on this slide in a is overly simplified, but their failure to do this is what gives rise to a claim for bad faith often. And when there's a claim for bad faith, that means that you may be able to get more money from your insurance company than it says on that declarations page under the policy for what are called emotional distress or general damages for the bad faith. The game plan. What you want to do is give the insurance company every reason to pay the claim. Another way of saying this is we want to give them every inch of rope to hang themselves if they don't pay the claim. At the end of the day, okay, the goal is for the insurance company to pay as much money on the claim as possible, hopefully the full policy limits, and to do it quickly and to get the money from their bank account to your bank account. Okay? Now, what your job is to be prepared, and you have to cooperate with your insurance company. If you're making a business loss or an income loss under certain provisions of policies, you want to provide earnings histories if available. You know, you want to provide W-2s, 1099s. It says here tax returns, but that's not really true, okay? Some insurance policies will require, in the language of the policy, that tax returns be provided. Even in those instances, there's likely a workaround for that, but you cannot just ignore the request. What there needs to be is a game plan put in place to provide the insurance company all the information they need to evaluate the loss. Tax returns are a are a different breed of cat when it comes to documentation, because there's a lot of things that show up in tax returns that frankly diminish what is stated income from what would be real income for purposes of an insurance claim. And so if that's the situation you're grappling with, you really do need to talk to a lawyer and your tax consultant and work through those issues so that you can make sure that you maximize what your recovery is that you're owed under your policy. And when I talk about maximizing your recovery, I'm not talking about exaggerating. I'm not talking about doing anything dishonest. You want to not exaggerate at all, and you want to be as honest as possible. There's nothing wrong with that. By maximizing, what we want you to do is be able to get every penny that you're entitled to because you paid for that coverage. You diligently paid your premiums over all the months and years that you did.
I'll just submit more information.
Assert yourself and go for the maximum that's allowed. It's a benefit you paid for. And insurance companies, when it comes to the claims end of the business, they are in the business of minimizing claims, paying as little as possible that they can get away with. Okay? And it oftentimes requires you to push back. And that's what we're talking about today. So when it comes to other reasons to pay the claim, you want to be as specific as possible. You want to provide, and there's a lot of information on this slide that doesn't relate to today's talk. So what I want to talk to you about in terms of documentation on a loss of a house, you want to make sure that you get them the information about what was the house before the loss. As much information as you can about the structure, the size, the square footage, where it sat on the lot, the position on the lot. You want to have the details of the house and the construction. Was it a metal roof? Was it a tile roof? Was it a comp roof? What type of windows? How many windows? How many rooms? What type of tile? Counters. All of that stuff goes into proving up the loss of the structure. You then have all your personal property, all the things in the house. If you were able to take a house, turn it upside down, shake it, what would fall out of it? The furniture, the clothing, the artwork, all of the different things, all the components of the kitchen. You want to make sure that you have as full and detailed a inventory. And at every page of that inventory, or at least at the top of the first page, but I really like to see it on every page, you want to write down partial inventory, because later, I guarantee it, you will think of things that you may not have remembered the first go around, that as life is underway, you remember, oh yeah, I had that and I had that other thing, and you want to be able to submit those things later and have them not question your integrity in doing that. So those are the kinds of things that you want to do. You want to have, if you have prior building plans, get those together so you can submit them. If you have prior appraisals, there's a lot of discussion that happens when a house burns down about appraisal. If you have prior good appraisals that show that your property, you may have refied within, 5 years of the fire. You want to get those appraisals together and see what they say, and you may be able to submit those. So more is better, and you want to be able to gather it all together in a logical way and be able to submit it to the insurance company, because the name of the game is you want it to be as easy as possible for the insurance company to pay as much as possible on your particular claim. So what happens if the insurance company refuses to pay the claim in whole or in part? Well, if that happens, you have to hire a lawyer. You really do, because what's going to happen is they're going to push back, and you need to have somebody who knows how to take them on. And it doesn't necessarily mean, and very often it doesn't mean, you're going to end up in a big, long, protracted lawsuit. You may, but a lot of times what it'll mean is you're able to push back in a methodical, thoughtful way that puts maximum pressure on the insurance company to honor its policy and to do what it's supposed to do. And there are some really basic rules for how to engage with the insurance company before that. So what you want to do is have your communications be persistent, be polite, and be in writing. Now, why do I say that? And I know I started talking about communicating in writing earlier. You want to be persistent because remember we talked about how there's the sales part of insurance, there's the underwriting part of insurance, and then there's also the claims part of insurance. Well, when you're dealing with claims, every time that claim is open and it first starts, there's what's called a claims file that's created for you and your claim. That claims file will get populated with all the written correspondence back and forth, all the documentation in support of the claim, documentation that doesn't support the claim. Then the adjuster, that's the person from the insurance company who's working for the insurance company to figure out the claim. And that adjuster has a supervisor, and that supervisor has people above him or her overlooking the process as well. But that adjuster, there will be a lot of communication back and forth with the adjuster. And the problem is a lot of that happens either face-to-face or over the phone. And things are said that are helpful. And one of the things that is the most frustrating part that I hear over and over again from people is, my adjuster said the insurance company would do certain things, and then they later changed their mind and they didn't do it. And then we look at the claims file ultimately, and it's not in the claims file that the adjuster said that the company would do certain things. And so what you want to do is anytime you meet with an adjuster or you talk to an adjuster and they say anything that's at all helpful to you or that you like, confirm it in writing. When they say things to you that you don't like, okay, what you want to do is get them to confirm in writing what it is that their position is and why it's their position. And you have to specifically request it in writing. Now, one of the things I said persistent, so you want to keep doing it. In writing, so you want to keep doing it in writing. But the other one was polite. So here's the deal. The insurance company and the adjuster, they're dealing with people all the time. And they will cheat you. It is baked into their business model. And no matter how friendly they sometimes may seem, don't delude yourself that they're not trying to cheat you, because they are. It's all part of how they do business. So what you want to do, and sometimes it's really hard to do, is be polite in your communications with them, because every communication you have is a communication that ends up in, and it should end up in, that claims file. And ultimately, if you have to sue the insurance company, all of those communications are evidence in your case. Now, if the communications in writing from you are, hey, you SOB, you said X, Y, and Z, and, you know, pox on you and your whole family, that makes really bad evidence against you if ultimately this ends up in litigation. And if you imagine those 12 jurors sitting over there thinking about, well, God, I don't really like this person, and this is no way to communicate with people, you can imagine that they'd feel that way. What you want to do is, no matter how frustrating the process is, you want to be able to show through that claims file that whatever breakdown there was in the relationship with the insurance company, whatever breakdown there was and why this claim wasn't paid timely, in full, and in a reasonable way, that the breakdown was because of the insurance company, that the insurance company didn't do its job, and that every step of the way, you, the policyholder, did your job. You started doing your job by buying the policy for peace of mind to protect you and your family. And then you continue to do your job by making a timely claim in the right way. And then you did your job by doing everything that was asked of you and required of you that's reasonable to do. to make sure the insurance company had all the information it needed in order to pay the claim and pay it in full. So that ultimately, if you have total strangers to this process, either a judge or a jury looking at it, the conclusion that's drawn from the communications back and forth is that the breakdown and the problems with this claim are 100% on the insurance company. And this last slide here is just a little bit about me.
Question.
So it looks like, and let me just continue on here. And this last slide is just if you want to contact me and you have any questions at all about your particular claim or anything that you want to talk about related to insurance, here's how you can contact me, and I'll leave that up as we turn to questions and look at this. And again, I apologize for the rough start, but it looks like we got our technical issues taken care of. So first question I have is, what if it takes a year to get their estimate from JS Held, who they hired to give an estimate of replacement costs? Shouldn't they extend your, and I'm not,
Yeah, that's it.
oh, extend your ALE? You know, again, what they're going to pay and what they're going to be required to pay is going to be dictated by the language of the policy. Now, if the insurance company is responsible for the delay, and if the insurance company is the one who created the problem in getting the home rebuilt, and I'm assuming from your question that's the issue. I don't know who JS Held is, so but if the insurance company is responsible for the delay, then you will have a very good argument for pursuing them. If you ran out of time to get your on your ALE, if that's on them, then you should have a good argument to have that extended, or you may be able to sue them for bad faith and recoup those monies later. We need a lot more information to know about that specific instance and what's going on there to be able to answer that in any greater detail. We have another question here. What is considered timely for ALE? What is the max amount typically paid for ALE for hotel, food, and miles, for example? It's a great question, and there is no definition of timely. What I always tell people is what is reasonable. Okay, if they're taking an unreasonable amount of time, then there's an issue there, and what you want to do is point it out to them. And every step of the way, what you want to do is if there is a struggle with the insurance company or there's a delay occurring, you want to get that in writing and make sure that when the claims file is read, that it's reading to show that the delay was on them and not you. The maximum amount typically paid for ALE for hotel, food, or miles, there is no typical. Okay, what you're paying for your hotel and food and those kinds of things, they're what you're paying. And as long as you haven't exhausted your ALE limits, your insurance company should pay for those things. As long as you are being reasonable, and especially if the costs you're incurring are for a lifestyle that is consistent with the lifestyle that you had before the fire or before the loss, then those items that you're requesting and the amounts for those items should be reasonable. I don't know how to get to.
She's clarifying in this jail JS Held. She's clarifying who they are.
Okay.
They are an independent
Okay, so going back to that question on JS Held, they're an independent company the insurance companies are using for replacement costs. You have to understand, and when you're talking about personal property, these I'm assuming here you're referencing your personal property. So when you're talking about personal property, these contractors that the insurance company use, they're basically just running through a computer database and spitting out information. And it's interesting because you've responded back, this is for building replacement. So let me just finish that comment though. On your personal property, the insurance company has an obligation to look at both objective and subjective factors. The objective factors are things like this is the brand, this is the age, this is what it cost to purchase when I purchased it. Subjective are what's the quality or condition. And the insurance companies all cheat on that because rather than spending the time and energy to figure out subjectively what was the true condition of that property, all they do is they default back to the age and then they apply a depreciation based on age, and they undercut all of you on those things. So for any personal property you have that is that was in particularly good condition relative to age, you should push back on that, and you should let them know, no, that may have been a 10-year-old item, but I babied that. I mean, that was something that was really, really well cared for, and it was worth far more than you're offering us for it. So on this question about building replacement, let me go back to the actual question was, what if it takes a year to get their estimate from JS Held, who they hired to give an estimate of replacement costs? Shouldn't they extend your ALE? And so JS Held is for building replacement. And my answer to you on that is yes. If that's their outfit that they have contracted with to get that estimate, and the contractor hasn't gotten that information to them, then as far as I'm concerned, they should extend your ALE, because what they've done is they've essentially outsourced their job to a third party that isn't doing the job, and your time period on ALE is run up. Now, the other question though is, what are your limits for ALE under your particular policy? You need to evaluate that, because if it's just a time issue that they don't want to keep paying your ALE, that's one thing. But if you've bumped up against your limits, that's a more difficult argument. But I would say that if it took them that long to get that part of the job done, then I would say that you are absolutely in a good position to argue that they're in bad faith. It is not reasonable, it's not timely, and if they weren't able to get it done, then they should have got somebody else involved, and they should have done it in a timely way. Hopefully that answers your question. And you've added to your question, you say 2 years from October 8th, and you say house will not be completed until December 30th of this year. Okay, so for that, I think that what you need to do is, in writing, engage them on this very specific issue, pointing to whatever evidence there is that the delay was on them, and arguing for an extension of the ALE, and you very well may get it. I'm happy to talk to you about that issue privately if you want to contact me, and we can talk through it to make sure that I fully understand the issue, fully understand what your personal situation is, and see if there's some way for us to help you. Are there any other questions? I have
quite a few coming in. So start with the red one.
Okay, so I have one though. It says private though, so I don't know if there's one. There's I'll just say Mike M, who submitted a question that also says private, And so what I would say, I don't want to read this or address it if you're intending to communicate with me privately. So I would say either resubmit that as a non-private message, or please just contact me directly at the information on the screen. And then here's another question. Are the cleaning companies biased? Yes, they are. When these cleaning companies have very lucrative arrangements where they are repeatedly rehired by the insurance companies to do this job, and for the most part, they do not really work on your behalf so much as they do to keep the insurance company satisfied so that their bills will be paid in full. Shouldn't air quality reports be taken first to determine if you need to clean? That is totally dependent on your situation. In a lot of situations, yes, testing should be done first. We run into this all the time. The insurance company says, no, what we want to do is clean first and then test. The problem with that is, if you don't test first, how do you really know what you're cleaning for? And then the second problem is the cleaning itself can actually cover up either through the scents in the cleaning, but it can cover up a problem that's there that will later reassert itself, and so you may not be as clean in your residence as they're claiming, and then you try to get them back out there and you end up with a big fight with the insurance company. Insurance companies, one way they try to save money is they only want to test after the cleaning, because they say, well, we'll clean first and then let's test and let's see what there is left to clean after a basic cleaning through one of these cleaning companies. It's a common fight. I always tell my clients, look, if your insurance policy does not specifically say that they're only going to pay for that testing once, and you want that testing to be done before the cleaning, and it makes sense to do it that way, in light of what you know about the extent of damage, then demand it and push for it, and have that fight with the insurance company. You'll have it politely, and you'll have to give them a good reason why, but I've had a lot of clients where it's been paid for, and then subsequently after cleaning, they do follow-up testing to make sure that the cleaning was done appropriately. So further question, how will insurance typically act if smoke damage is determined uncleanable? And then the follow-up question to that, will they pay out? And so how they will act is they will try generally to minimize the impact of smoke damage. They will generally be relatively dishonest with you, and it's pretty rare that an insurance company takes the position that smoke damage isn't cleanable because they don't want to pay for the cleanup. But here's reality. Reality is that smoke gets into every nook and cranny of your house. It gets inside the walls. It gets in the insulation. It gets everywhere. It's in the carpet. It's in the padding of the carpet. It's in all the soft furniture. And the insurance company is most likely going to have to be pushed and pushed and pushed to force them to pay to do all the work that needs to be done. But here's the deal. It's your house. If you're going to put your family back in there, you need to be comfortable that you're putting your family back into an environment that you feel is safe and healthy. And if the property is not cleanable, then you need to push to have it either have some destructive work done, have that part that isn't cleanable removed and replaced, and the insurance company is on the hook up to your policy limits to do that work. But again, in most instances, they're going to fight you on that because they're going to say that it is cleanable. Another question, do I have to list where I purchased my personal property when doing an inventory list? Here's the deal. If you know where you purchased it, you should include it. And if you don't know where you purchased it, just say you don't remember or leave it blank. Your insurance, I guarantee you, your insurance policy does not detail that in order for you to collect for personal property, you have to identify in writing where you purchase each of these items. And because it's not in the policy, they can't, after the fact, come up with ways and hoops for you to jump through that are unreasonable. If you don't remember, you don't remember. If you do remember, go ahead and put it. But you probably don't have to. But if they're asking for it and you have that information available, there are fights worth having, and there are fights that probably aren't worth having, and that's probably not one worth having if you have the information at your fingertips. Okay, so I heard back here from the message that was previously submitted privately that it's not private, and the question is, could you address the issues with purchasing a replacement home instead of rebuilding? That's a really difficult question. It's policy dependent. It depends on the language of your policy. What is in there? And here's how I understand the question. So your home burns down, and you have your policy limits, and then a lot of policies have a replacement provision that will, if you rebuild, it'll pay either 25 or 50% on top of the policy limits stated for your dwelling A coverage. So let's just simple hypothetical. So if you have a $100,000 dwelling limit for the lost structure, another provision of the policy basically says if you rebuild, they'll pay up to 150% of that. So that would be $150,000. So the question, as I understand it, is, well, what if we don't rebuild at our property in Paradise or Santa Rosa or wherever it is that your property is? What if we don't rebuild there? Can we still utilize that 150% as opposed to the 100% by going elsewhere? And there is no universal answer to that. It's very policy specific. Is there language in the policy that allows you to do that? That being said, believe it or not, there are some insurance companies that have allowed people to do that, even in circumstances where the policies don't necessarily allow for that. That's exceptionally rare. But there are policies that certainly do allow for that. It really depends on the language of the specific policy. And by all means, if you have any question about that, if you are looking to make a move elsewhere, if you want to rebuild elsewhere, just purchase elsewhere, what you're going to want to do before you step into debt or use resources that you can't afford to take a gamble on, get clarification with your insurance company. And I always tell people, send a letter like the following. Dear insurance company or dear adjuster, my absolute preference is to rebuild on my current lot where my house burned down. As I read my insurance policy, I have 150% of my dwelling limits available to me to do the rebuild. But as I also understand in my insurance policy on my reading of it, because it talks about a replacement home, and some policies will specify that it doesn't have to be on the same premises. But so going back to this letter, my preference is to build here, but my read on this is that that 150% applies to a replacement home, and I interpret that to mean that I can replace my burned down home elsewhere and still have the 150%. Please confirm in writing that my understanding is correct. And if it's not, please give me a detailed explanation why the answer is no. So before you get into a situation where you've committed money that you don't have elsewhere, get confirmation of that and ask for a detailed explanation as to why that's the insurance company's position if they're not going to support it. And then feel free to call me or really any lawyer who does this type of work, and we'll be happy to walk you through it and say whether or not we think you're right or you're wrong. And we're happy to talk to you before you submit a letter like that and look at your policy and say, hey, look, this is what we think. I do that for people all the time, and I know there are tons and tons of lawyers out there who do insurance work who, especially in this environment where so many people lost their homes, where people are willing to look at your policy and talk to you about it. But if you have any questions at all about your policy, feel free to call me. Feel free to write to me, and I'll do my best to answer the specific questions about your specific policies. So the next question we got here, any word on the announcement of the cause of the Tubbs fire? I wish there was. So far there's been no specific announcement. There's been nothing that's come out of CAL FIRE, unless it happened after noon today while we've been on this. There's been nothing that's come out of CAL FIRE to identify what CAL FIRE says is the cause of the Tubbs fire. Any other questions? Well, listen, I really appreciate all the great questions and the opportunity to talk to you today. We'll keep doing these webinars, and we really want your feedback too on what we can do better. Obviously, we got off to a rough start, so we already know we can do that better. But if there are particular subjects that you would like us to present on, let us know. We're happy to put it together and talk to you about it. And if you have follow-up questions, and stay in touch, let us know what you think. And we want to know what you thought of the presentation. Thank you so much.